Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. On behalf of BYJU'S, I wish all of you a very happy, prosperous and inspiring 2019. I pray that all your good and legitimate dreams come true. 2018 has been an eventful year for BYJU'S. We have been crowned as the world's most valuable edtech company. For me personally, I started taking these sessions from mid-August and have enjoyed every single moment of this. And I have a request. If these video lectures have made any positive contribution in your preparation process, please like this video, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I too want to end this year on a high note. And for that, can I please expect 5,000 likes on this video? Please. Now let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu. There were elections in Bangladesh, and in these elections the incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina defeated the opposition. And Sheikh Hasina will be sworn in as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh for a third consecutive term. Although there were allegations of mass-scale rigging of these elections, but nevertheless the win of Sheikh Hasina is a good news for India. Why? Because it was during the 10-year rule of Sheikh Hasina that the relationship between India and Bangladesh got strengthened. In fact, Bangladesh is the brightest spot in India's diplomacy and foreign policy. Now let's look at another news on page number 1. Triple Talaq bill likely to face stiff resistance in Rajya Sabha. Now we have discussed this issue in September. My colleague also discussed this a couple of days ago. But let me address this issue once again for those who have just joined this channel. To begin with, it's important to understand the concept of marriage in Islam. Islam places a particular emphasis on marriage. In fact, marriage in Islam is considered to be very sacred. But if marriage is sacred, marriage is also a contract in Islam. And just like any other contract, this contract can also be broken. That means divorce is allowed. But what are the Islamic ways of granting divorce? Number 1, mutual consent. Husband and wife, they don't agree with each other. There are irretrievable differences between them, and both husband and wife mutually agree that we should part ways, then divorce is formalized. That means through mutual consent, the divorce is granted. Second is khulla. And khulla is something which is initiated by a wife. That means wife is asking for a divorce. But under Islam, the power to grant divorce is given only to a husband. Wife can only seek divorce. And if the husband agrees, then the divorce can be granted. That means another way of granting divorce is when the wife requests for a divorce. That is what we call khulla. But then we have talaq, divorce. And there are 3 ways of granting divorce or talaq. One is talaq-e-hasan, then we have talaq-e-ahsan, and then we have talaq-e-biddat. Let's understand these 3 variants of talaq. In talaq-e-hasan, what happens? Husband pronounces talaq on his wife, but once, and then waits for 1 month or 1 full menstrual cycle. Then husband pronounces talaq again and waits for another month. Then waits for another month, and in total waits for 90 days. After the expiry of 90-day period, the divorce is formalized, the divorce is granted. That means husband pronounces talaq on his wife once every 1 month, every full menstrual cycle. And after the 90-day period is over, the divorce is granted. Then we have talaq-e-ahsan. Husband pronounces talaq on his wife only once, but then waits for 90 days. That means there is no need to grant divorce every 30 days. Husband pronounces talaq on his wife once and then waits for 90-day period. After this 90-day period is over, the divorce is granted, the divorce is formalized. But what happens in these 90 days? During this 90-day period, the talaq can be revoked. That means husband can take back this talaq. During this 90-day period, 2 more things can happen. Reconciliation and arbitration. What is reconciliation? Husband pronounces talaq on his wife, then repents. I said this talaq under the influence of liquor, under the influence of my family members. I was wrong. I should not have pronounced talaq on you. That means you are repenting on your talaq, and then there is reconciliation between husband and wife. The talaq is revoked, and husband and wife, they continue to exist in a married relationship. Arbitration can also take place. That means the village elders or the family elders, they will try and convince husband and the wife that what are you doing? You both look good together. These things happen in any married life. But you should not take this drastic step of separating from each other. You should not apply for divorce. Please come back together. And because of this reconciliation and arbitration, the divorce can be nullified, talaq can be revoked, and husband and wife, they continue to exist in a married relationship. But then there is talaq-e-biddat. What is biddat? If we look at the meaning of this word biddat, biddat means innovation. That means this form of talaq was not present during the time of the Prophet. This was innovated by the mullahs, by the clerics. According to this talaq-e-biddat, what happens? Husband pronounces talaq on his wife 3 times in a single utterance. This is what we call instant triple talaq. That means instantly husband pronounces talaq on his wife 3 times in a single utterance, and the divorce is granted. The divorce is formalized. That means in this talaq-e-biddat, there is no room of reconciliation. There is no room for arbitration, and this talaq cannot be taken back. This divorce cannot be retracted. And it is this talaq-e-biddat which was a bone of contention in India, because this was discriminatory against the Muslim women. There is no scope for arbitration. There is no scope for reconciliation. The talaq cannot be retracted. The divorce cannot be nullified. And it is this instant triple talaq that was a bone of contention for Muslim women. Talaq-e-biddat was given on WhatsApp, Facebook, Skype, so on and so forth. There were series of petitions filed that this talaq-e-biddat should be banned. But then each time there was a talk that talaq-e-biddat will be banned in India, the radical Muslim men or the clerics or the mullahs of Islam, what they would cry? They would cry that Islam is in danger. They would say that marriage is a civil matter between husband and the wife, and we don't need interference from the state. The state should be out of this. But where were these radical clerics and mullahs when many other changes to many other laws were made? For example, under Islam, punishment for theft is you chop the hand of the offender. But under Indian Penal Code, punishment for theft is only imprisonment. Why didn't these radical mullahs say that no, we should not come under Indian Penal Code? If any Muslim man commits robbery or theft, his hand should be chopped off. They didn't say this. On top of that, adultery. Punishment for adultery under Islamic law is death by stoning. But adultery has been decriminalized by the Supreme Court recently. Why didn't these radical mullahs and clerics claim and petition the Supreme Court that you should stay out of this? If a Muslim man commits adultery, he should be sentenced to death through stoning. They didn't say this. Why? Because here the offenders would be men. But here in instant triple talaq, the victims are innocent women. That is why they want the state not to interfere in this instant triple talaq. They want instant triple talaq to continue. But it is this instant triple talaq that has been banned in predominantly Muslim countries. Pakistan banned this in 1960. Egypt, Bangladesh, Indonesia, all these countries, Turkey has banned this practice of instant triple talaq, but not India. Why? Because in India, we treated this issue as a potential vote getter. And it was purely because of vote bank politics that instant triple talaq was not banned in India. But then what happened? One lady, Shaira Banu, she approached the Supreme Court and challenged the constitutional validity of instant triple talaq. She petitioned that instant triple talaq violates my fundamental rights, violates my dignity, and as such should be declared unconstitutional. Now a 5-judge bench 5-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court had to decide whether instant triple talaq will continue or not. And the composition of this bench was also unique. We had a Muslim judge on the panel, a Hindu judge, a Christian judge, a Parsi judge, and this bench was presided over by a Sikh Chief Justice of India, Justice Kehar. But ironically, there was no woman on this panel. So a question of gender justice was decided by 5 male judges of the Supreme Court. But nevertheless, these 5 judges heard the arguments in this case and then they had to decide. And what did they decide? We had Justice Kehar and Justice Nazir. Then we had Justice UU Lalit and Justice Rohinton Fali Nariman. And then we had Justice Kurian Joseph. These 2 judges said instant triple talaq is not banned. Why? That is for Parliament to decide. We are giving 6 months to Parliament. You frame a law and decide whether instant triple talaq should be banned or not, because this is a matter for Parliament to decide. This is not a matter for courts to decide, because religion is not a matter of logic. Religion is a matter of faith, and this faith cannot be decided in the judiciary. So these 2 judges decided that we will not interfere in this matter. We are giving 6 months time to the Parliament. You frame a law and decide whether instant triple talaq should continue or not. But meanwhile, what we can do, we can impose a stay on this practice of instant triple talaq, but we won't ban it. These 2 judges said instant triple talaq is unconstitutional. Why is it unconstitutional? Because it violates Article 14 of Indian Constitution. It violates Article 21 of Indian Constitution. And any law, according to Article 13, any law, if it violates fundamental rights, whether this law has been passed in the past or whether this law will be passed in the future, any law, if it violates fundamental rights chapter, that law shall be declared unconstitutional. And if instant triple talaq is mentioned in Muslim Personal Law of 1937, and this law violates the 2 fundamental rights of the Constitution, this provision of instant triple talaq is unconstitutional and therefore it is banned. But Kurian Joseph said something else. Kurian Joseph said instant triple talaq is not unconstitutional. Instant triple talaq is un-Islamic. Why un-Islamic? Because Islam has a well-defined procedure for granting divorce. There should be reconciliation, there should be arbitration, and then divorce can be formalized. Since in this instant triple talaq or talaq-e-biddat, there is no room for arbitration, there is no room for reconciliation, you cannot repent, you cannot retract this instant triple talaq. That is why instant triple talaq is un-Islamic and therefore it is banned. But here lies another problem. 2 judges said instant triple talaq cannot be banned. 2 judges said instant triple talaq is unconstitutional. 1 judge said instant triple talaq should not continue. So by the majority of 3:2, instant triple talaq was set aside. But instant triple talaq was not declared unconstitutional. It was merely set aside by the Supreme Court. That means instant triple talaq will not come into play. But then the government said that even after this triple talaq judgment, there were still more than 250 instances where husbands pronounced instant triple talaq on their wives. And that is why we need a law. The government introduced a Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Bill, but it could not be passed in the Rajya Sabha because government does not have the majority in Rajya Sabha. Then what the president did? President promulgated an ordinance. And now this ordinance is to be replaced by a law because ordinance has a very limited shelf life. After the reassembly of Parliament, both houses of the Parliament, the ordinance has to be replaced by a law within 6 weeks. If this ordinance is not replaced by a law within 6 weeks, then this ordinance will lapse and this ordinance will not continue to have its force. And now a new bill has been introduced in the Parliament, Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Bill 2018, which seeks to replace this ordinance. This bill has been passed in Lok Sabha, will be debated in the Rajya Sabha today, but in all likelihood, this bill will not be passed in Rajya Sabha. It might be sent to a select committee of the Rajya Sabha. But then there are others who criticize this bill. Let's look at the grounds on which this bill has been criticized. Number one, according to this bill, if a husband pronounces instant triple talaq on his wife, this husband will be given 3 years imprisonment. That means it has now become a penal offense. This husband has to provide compensation to his wife. Originally, this offense was non-bailable. Now this offense has become bailable. That means bail will be provided, but only if the magistrate hears the side of the story of the woman. Then bail can be granted to the husband. But this bill has been criticized for a variety of reasons. Number one, marriage is basically a civil matter, and so is divorce. In civilian matters, how can you prescribe 3 years imprisonment? How can you make a civil dispute into a penal dispute and then provide 3 years imprisonment for a husband? That is why this bill has been criticized. On top of that, there is an argument that there was no requirement of a law. Why? When Supreme Court in its judgment said instant triple talaq is banned, that means even if husband pronounces instant triple talaq on his wife, divorce will not be granted. That means marriage is still valid. Marriage is still legal. Then why do we need a law if instant triple talaq does not lead to divorce? That is where the argument comes in the form of the argument given by Montesquieu, the French philosopher. Montesquieu said, if there is no need for a law and you pass a law, then it is the worst example of tyranny. And tyranny is the most cruel government rule. If there is no requirement for a law on instant triple talaq, because already Supreme Court has set it aside, why do we need to pass such a law? That's another argument against instant triple talaq bill. Third is, why should husband pay compensation to his wife when there is no divorce? And how can husband provide compensation to his wife if this husband is in jail for 3 years? And if husband goes to jail, then there is no room for reconciliation. That means this wife will have no option whatsoever. Her marriage cannot be saved at all because now this husband will in no way take this woman back. So ultimately, this is not a bill for the protection of the Muslim woman, but this is a bill against Muslim women. These are some of the arguments that have been presented against this instant triple talaq bill. But then if these are the criticisms against this bill, what is the way forward? What is the solution about this? Let's look at the solutions. Number one, if the government says that there have been instances of instant triple talaq even after the Supreme Court judgment, we need to understand that any judgment of the Supreme Court cannot have instant effect. That means this judgment, there should be awareness about this judgment. Only when the awareness reaches its pinnacle, reaches its optimum level, can then we ensure that this particular judgment of the Supreme Court is adhered to. Maybe those 250 instances where the husbands pronounced instant triple talaq on their wives, maybe these individuals were not knowing that instant triple talaq has been banned by the Supreme Court. So we should always provide a suitable time period for the judgment to have a sound resonance in the public eye. That's number one. Husband is still pronouncing instant triple talaq on his wife, but it should be counted as a mental abuse. And this form should be covered under the Domestic Violence Act. That means we already have a law in place called Domestic Violence Act. And if husband, even after the Supreme Court judgment, is pronouncing instant triple talaq on his wife, this husband should be booked under the Domestic Violence Act. That's the reform. Third thing, there is a paper, contract paper called Nikah Nama. On this Nikah Nama, meher amount is mentioned. What is this meher amount? That means husband has to pay this amount to his wife. And without paying this meher amount, the marriage between husband and the wife cannot be completed, cannot be legalized. And this wife can ask anything on this meher. Any amount of gold, any amount of jewelry. If this meher amount is not satisfying the wife, it's not satisfying the women, she may not agree to this marriage at all. And it is on this nikah nama that wife can mention, or this woman can mention, that you should not grant me instant triple talaq. So all these provisions that you are trying to incorporate in this Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Bill, you could have mentioned those points in the nikah nama, since it is a contract between husband and the wife. If you violate this contract, then this husband can be booked for violating the contract. That is the solution to this instant triple talaq bill. And that is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another news on page number 11. A study was conducted by two non-governmental organizations, Child Rights in You and Center for Budget and Governance Accountability. What did their study tell us? They looked at 14th Finance Commission report. Under Article 280 of Indian Constitution, the President shall have to constitute Finance Commission every 5 years. What is the job of this Finance Commission? One of the role of this Finance Commission is that the divisible pool of taxes that the government has, the central government has, this divisible pool of taxes should be shared with the states. For example, the proceeds from income tax, corporation tax, the proceeds from these taxes are to be shared with the states. And according to what formula? That formula is decided by the 15th. That formula is decided by the Finance Commission. And 14th Finance Commission recommended that 42% of this divisible pool of taxes should be given to the states. That means states got more revenue, more funds out of the recommendation of 14th Finance Commission. But despite the fact that 14th Finance Commission increased the overall revenue of the states, and this revenue also led to increased revenue in the education sector, but this increased revenue is not translating into enough teachers in the government schools. So more funds are not enough to attract teachers to government schools. And despite the fact that states are increasing their budgets for school education, the study says that the good quality teachers are lacking in government schools, and we have large number of vacancies of teachers in government schools. And this is the list. So if at all there is a question on educational reforms or an essay on education, you can cite this report and say, despite the fact that states got more revenue because of 14th Finance Commission, it is still failing to attract good quality teachers to government schools. That is what this issue is all about. Now let's look at another news article on page number 11. Recently celebrated golfer Jyoti Randhawa was arrested in Uttar Pradesh on charges of poaching. But this newspaper article tells us that better patrolling technology has helped foresters nab the golfer. And this has become possible because of an application called M-Stripe. What is M-Stripe? Basically, it's an Android-based application. And this application was developed in 2010 by NTCA, National Tiger Conservation Authority. The objective of M-Stripe is to strengthen patrolling and surveillance of what? Of the endangered Bengal tiger. Forest guards in these tiger reserves, what they are equipped with? They are equipped with PDAs, personal digital assistants, and GPS devices, global positioning system. And because of these two devices, these forest guards are better positioned to capture data related to tiger sightings, related to tiger deaths, related to wildlife crime. And it is because of this technology that many such wildlife crimes have been reported and checked. There was a recent report which said that use of M-Stripes in Pench Tiger Reserve has resulted in a significant check in anti-forest and anti-wildlife activities. And where is this Pench Tiger Reserve? This Pench Tiger Reserve or Pench National Park is a tiger reserve, and it straddles across two states in India, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let's look at another news article on page number 18. Space probe nears dark side of the moon. We are talking about Chinese space probe. The name is Chang'e 4. And if this Chang'e 4 lands on the dark side of the moon, it will become the first space probe in the history of mankind to do such a thing. But what is the task of Chang'e 4? The tasks include surveying the moon's terrain and gather data about the landform and the mineral composition of the moon, particularly of something called Aitken Basin. And what is this Aitken Basin? It is one of the largest craters in solar system. That's another important detail for your prelims exam. Now let's look at the most fascinating detail about this Chinese space probe. This probe is carrying seeds for an experiment in cultivating vegetables in a closed environment on the surface of the moon. But what is this dark side of the moon? The far side of the moon is known as the dark side of the moon. Why is it called dark? Because it is not visible from Earth. Why is it not visible from the Earth? As the moon is tidally locked to Earth, rotating at the same rate that it orbits our planet. That is why this dark side or this dark space is never visible from the Earth. This far side or dark side has long fascinated scientists. But it was observed for the first time and photographed for the first time in 1959 by a Soviet space probe. The name of the space probe was Luna 3. That means this far side was observed and photographed in 1959 for the first time by this Luna 3, and Luna 3 is the Soviet space probe. Apollo 8 astronauts, they were the first one to see this dark side with the naked eye, but no one has ever landed on it. But this was about the dark side of the moon. What about the visible side of the moon? The side which is visible to Earth. This near side of the moon has been reached before by US, by Soviets in 1976, and also by Chinese. If Chang'e 4 looks into the dark side of the moon, Chang'e 3 probe was a probe which landed on the visible side of the moon way back in the year 2013. That is what you need to understand from this newspaper article. Now let us look at some of the editorials and columns from today's newspaper, beginning with HIV Reality Check. A 23-year-old pregnant woman in Tamil Nadu, she tested positive for HIV after she received a unit of blood at a government hospital blood bank, indicating glaring lapses in screening procedures. What happened? This blood donor had donated the blood previously as well, and thereby he had tested positive. But this result of this test was not communicated to this blood donor. When he donated this blood again, without any screening process, this blood was given to this pregnant lady and she also tested positive for HIV. And ultimately what happened? This blood donor, he committed suicide and he also died. Let's understand this newspaper article in great detail. For example, I am a blood donor. I am donating blood at a government hospital or at a blood bank. This blood is to be tested. Tested for HIV, tested for hepatitis B, tested for hepatitis C, tested for malaria. Once this blood is tested, only if the report of this test is negative can we use this blood for transfusion or donation. But in this case, what had happened, since 2004, there is a rule that whenever I donate blood at a blood bank or whenever and wherever I donate this blood, I should give it in writing whether I should be communicated about this test report or not. That means the result of this test should be communicated to me if I have given my consent in the blood donation form. But this result was not communicated to this blood donor. And according to the rules, if this report tests positive, then you inform this blood donor and then you recommend this blood donor to VCTCs. And what are these VCTCs? Voluntary Counseling and Testing Centers. And these VCTCs will conduct another test on you. And if this test is also positive, then VCTCs, they send a report to all blood banks saying this particular individual is tested positive for HIV and he cannot donate blood. That means in this case, there have been serious lapses. Number one, blood donor was not informed that he has been tested positive. Second, he was not referred to VCTCs. Third, this blood, when he donated it for the second time, this was also not tested the second time. And this talks about the series of lapses in our screening process. And in a state such as Tamil Nadu, which is a pioneer in blood testing, which is one of the best performing states in terms of quality blood testing. And this editorial talks about serious changes that we need to introduce in the system. According to this editorial, the success rate or contact rate is less than 50%. That means these blood donors, less than 50% of them are referred to these VCTCs. That means these hospital blood banks are not in a position to contact these blood donors whenever they test positive for HIV. That means we need to create more awareness so that these blood donors are informed about their test results, and if they test positive, they should be recommended to these counseling centers, and then there should be awareness that more and more blood donors should be exposed to these VCTCs so that a disaster such as this does not recur. That is what this editorial is all about. Now let's look at another column, lifelines beyond farm loan waivers. I told you yesterday that there is going to be a separate video lecture on farm loan waivers, but even then we will discuss this topic because this is something that is not mentioned in that farm loan waiver video. Farmer is now again at the center of our political discourse. Congress won the election in 3 states and announced loan waivers in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. This column says that farm loan waiver is necessary, but it is only an element of immediate relief. Because the reality is that the farmer in India is under debt trap. And the immediate relief that we can provide this farmer with is a farm loan waiver. If you look at 52% of our farming household, they are under debt. And in some states, this percentage is 89 to 92%. Lal Bahadur Shastri way back in 1960s gave a slogan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. We should talk about our soldier, we should also take care of the farmer. So farmers were always at the center of our political discourse, but we started neglecting them. And the immediate relief that we have to provide to these farmers is the loan waiver. But farmer loan waiver is only an immediate relief. Farmer loan waiver is an acknowledgement that the system has failed these farmers. And because of 3 reasons, the farmers have been failed in this country. Number one, whenever there is a drought or whenever there is a crop failure, there is very less or inadequate compensation that we provide to these farmers. That's problem number 1. Number 2, our Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana is at best a failure. And this failure we have discussed previously, where more than 1 crore farmers, they have refused to re-register themselves under this Fasal Bima Yojana. That means even this crop insurance scheme is failing. And third, the prices of our farm produce, whenever it goes below the minimum support price announced by the government, then these farmers have no other option but to rely on money lenders, rely on loans, and ultimately they enter into the debt trap. So farm loan waiver is a necessity for them. But today farmers are not asking for only farm loan waiver. They're asking for something else. They go beyond this and they're asking for freedom from indebtedness law. That means they need a law to be passed by the parliament, and this law should save them from further debt trap. And this bill has been championed by all Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. And there are 2 key elements of reform mentioned in this bill. 1, institutionalized credit system. Farm loan waiver, many people argue, is only benefiting the rich landlord, is only benefiting the big farmer. It is not benefiting the small and marginal farmer. It is not benefiting an individual who is involved in sharecropping. And to save these individuals, to save small marginal sharecropping farmer, we need to provide credit system to them so that they do not go to a money lender and enter into this debt trap. Because these farmers, small farmers, they have been kept out of the credit system. Loans have not been provided to them. Loans have been refused to them. That is why this law should call for that every farmer should be provided with a Kisan credit card, and at the time of the need, this Kisan credit card will save this individual farmer from entering into a debt trap. And the second, it talks about establishing a distress and disaster relief commissions. Just like we have disaster relief commissions in Kerala. What these disaster and distress relief commissions will do, they will be set up at the national level, at the state level as well. And these commissions will recommend for a particular crop, if it has failed because of crop loss, if it has failed because of crop diseases, if it has failed because of the monsoon failure, compensation should be provided for those who are sowing this crop, or loan waiver should be provided to only those farmers who are cropping this particular crop. The principle is that farmers who suffer losses due to those circumstances that are entirely out of their control, they deserve to be protected. And this column also talks about, in addition to reforming the credit system, agriculture should be made profitable by ensuring that fair remunerative prices are given, cost of cultivation is reduced. We should promote viable farmer collectives, unions, for example, and this mode of agriculture should be sustainable in the future as well. That is what this column is all about. There is another column on page number 9, Naute Johar, a verdict for all times. It talks about Naute Johar judgment of the Supreme Court, wherein Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality. For that, there is already a video lecture available on our YouTube channel. Please watch that section 377 video. You will understand what this newspaper article is all about. Now let's look at some of the prelims based questions, beginning with, which of the following has been included as a World UNESCO Heritage Site in 2018? It is Victorian Gothic and Art Deco ensembles of Mumbai. Which of the following seas touch the coastline of Russia? Kara Sea, Laptev Sea, Chuky Sea, Sea of Oshkosh, Aral Sea? No. So it is 1, 2, 3 and 4. Look at the map. This is the explanation to this map based question. Previous year's prelims based question 2011. What is virtual private network? It's a computer network across a public internet that provides users access to their organization's network while maintaining the security of the information transmitted. Main special answer should be in less than 250 words. Repeated loan waivers used every few years as election sops may be in the interest of political parties but not in the interest of the farmers. Justify. And you can write the answer to this question based on the analysis that we did on the farm loan waiver article in today's newspaper. That is it for now from our newspaper analysis. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day and have a wonderful new year. Thank you.